Salams from the People's Dispatch Studios in New Delhi. I'm Siddhant Ani and you're watching Daily Debrief. It's Monday and on the show today we have the latest in the Iran nuclear deal talks. We have our regular COVID-19 weekly update and we recap the final day of action from the Africa Cup of Nations. First up, the 8th round of talks ongoing in Vienna for several weeks are set to resume on Tuesday to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. The EU has made this statement. The EU is, of course, mediating those negotiations. Abdul, who's covering the story closely, joins us now. Abdul, what is the latest in terms, what do we expect from, talks are set to resume tomorrow. What can we expect from the resumption and what's been going on in the past week that the talks have been on hold?
Well, these are two different questions. First, let me address to the question related to what happened in last 1 week. As you rightly pointed out, this is the 8th round of talk, which started in last year December, which continued throughout the January, and then they took a break. The break was basically to for all the diplomats who are there in Vienna, go back to their respective capitals and to discuss it with their respective governments. Because the hint was that all the technical aspects of the talk has been finalized. The only political decisions need to be taken. So which can only be taken by the higher authorities sitting in the capitals, different capitals. So this break, which is ending tomorrow and there will be resumption, is basically was to create what will be the future of the talks which are going on for last 1 year. In between, on Friday, US provided a kind of, they claim that this is a kind of a positive step towards the restoration of the nuclear deal, which was they provided a sanction waiver, which was withdrawn by Trump administration in May 2020. So they, according to that waiver, the companies from Russia, China, and other European countries can now work with nuclear sites in Iran. Well, US was expecting that this will lead to a larger response from Iranians, but Iranians, of course, are saying that this is one of the steps, a very minor step, which were taken since 2018, and which has been, it's a positive development, but it is not good enough for building a confidence which will lead to the resumption of, which will lead to the final negotiations, which is basically to what will happen next. The second part of your question, basically, we are expecting, but it is expected basically in the larger international domain that there will be some kind of major development after tomorrow's meeting resumption. On the line that the US may agree to withdraw the sanctions, we don't know what will be, and that can lead to basically what we are expecting for last 1 year, that there will be some kind of restoration of the nuclear deal. So this is what is basically what happened in last 1 week and what is expected. Yeah.
In your assessment of it, there is some kind of political agreement, broadly speaking. Of course, the final modalities have to still be worked out, but there is some sort of broader political agreement between all the parties involved in this agreement.
I'm not sure about it. There is technical agreement.
Right.
When we say technical and political, basically technical, that what needs to be done, step 1, step 2, step 3, which they have agreed by and large, according to their claims, the claims made in media. The political aspect is still not clear, which basically is to take the political decision to withdraw the sanctions. It is a political decision whether the US will withdraw the sanctions, which will ultimately lead to Iranians going back to their commitments under the nuclear deal, which they, of course, they claim that they have strategically moved on to basically, quote unquote, violate and so on and so forth. So that is a political decision to be taken. So far, we are only sure about that there is a process agreed upon, and the process, which is not clear, which has not been made public yet, but that process is by and large, and it is on the line of what Iranians were demanding all this while, by and large, which was that first you remove the sanctions, which were imposed post May 2018 after the US unilaterally withdrew from the nuclear deal. And then the Iranians will revert back to their commitments under the nuclear deal. And then we can think about further negotiations, because US so far has been reluctant and basically demanding more than what expected from Iran on nuclear deal. They are asking for basically for negotiations on Iran's regional policy. They are also bringing topics like human right, quote unquote, human right violations in Iran. Everything needs to be addressed before they withdraw the sanctions, which Iranians have completely refused.
All right, we're also losing Abdul's video in there, so we'll end it at that. Very clear message coming out from the Iranian Foreign Ministry, of course, saying that a responsible US government should stick to the commitments it made in 2015 when that deal was agreed on. This is an important story that we'll keep following, of course, as the week progresses. All right, so as we have been doing regularly on Daily Debrief, every Monday we've been giving you an update on the global COVID-19 situation. And joining us for that, as usual, is Newsclick Editor-in-Chief Prabir Purkayastha. Prabir, this week you've been looking at the numbers and how things are progressing. What is your assessment of the situation as of now?
Clear that the Omicron wave, as we've been calling it, has taken place at different points of time in different countries. But in all of them, there are certain commonalities. It's gone up very rapidly. That means infections have spread very quickly. It also has the capability of vaccine escape. That means even if you've been vaccinated, you are at risk of at least an infection. And also that the amount of what you suffer seems to be less, means it has not been so bad in terms of the impact on the health of the people, that less number of people have reached the hospitals and intensive care facilities. But a caution here that those who have not been vaccinated, they seem to be the larger number of people who have become seriously ill. So the clear distinction between those who are vaccinated and not vaccinated has come out in serious cases. And that, I think, holds now across the world. The interesting part of it is that though the numbers are falling, it's not falling as rapidly as the numbers went up. And you can find in different parts of the world now already the Omicron wave is partially over. For instance, if you take countries like UK, France, India, for example, which numbers went up quite rapidly, now they seem to be coming down in different places. The numbers are still rising, but across, if you take country as a whole, then you see the numbers are falling. As I said, the main feature of this pandemic, or this wave, has been that the hospital systems have not been stressed too much, except in the United States, particularly in certain states where there are still large numbers of unvaccinated who seem to have been affected. Now, it's also very clear the Omicron is going to wipe out Delta as the dominant variant. So if you talk about variants, yes, it is very, very clear now. Omicron is going to become the dominant variant simply because its infection rate is much faster, much more than what other variants have. So it is going to dominate the new people who are going to get infected. So yes, the Delta still persists, but slowly you can see the Omicron numbers are replacing it. So by all accounts, it's going to go. And the numbers will be really in the future almost entirely Omicron, unless we get new variants. And here one caution. Also within Omicron, you see there is a BA1 and BA2, two variants which are there, sub-variants as they would be termed now. And you can see BA2 dominate in certain countries, while BA1, the slightly older variant, is still there in other countries, but doesn't seem to show too much of a difference in the way they impact the population. A quick transmission, so infection rates are high, but the effect on overall terms in terms of serious illness seems to be largely similar. So it's really more variants, which is slightly more infectious than the other, that may decide which one of the variants within the variants last longer.
Right. So, Prabir, that kind of covered the good and the bad of the current situation with the pandemic. Coming to the ugly now, which is to do still with the sort of vaccine inequality that we are seeing globally, both in terms of production, in terms of access, and in terms of distribution. You've been looking at some fairly interesting numbers. Could you please take us through those?
Well, it's again, the numbers are clear that certain countries, certain regions have got well served with vaccines. There, the issue is everybody getting vaccinated or not? And there you have the anti-vaxxer population, which seems to be much more a disease of the United States than other countries, but they are not absent in other countries. And there is also the kind of, what shall we say, COVID, tiredness. People are saying, enough, let's go back to normalcy, come what may. So those kind of things you are seeing. But when you talk about vaccines per se, the interesting figure that I'd like to share with you is that if you look at the companies or countries which exported the largest number of vaccines, China has been the leader in exporting vaccines more than any others, except if you club the European Union as one entity and see their export. China has produced more vaccines for itself because it's a very large population and they have vaccinated very large numbers. But they've also exported a very large number of vaccines, unlike, for instance, India, which also has produced a fair amount of vaccines, but has not been able to export because we have not yet been able to meet our own demand. So that is one characteristic that you can see. Then you can see also the profits that have been made. And for instance, Moderna has actually exported very little, but it has made huge profits. Pfizer has made huge profits. They have made profits like $45 billion, $32 billion. These are the largest profit Pfizer has apparently made for a very long time. Moderna, of course, this is its first successful vaccine, so they never made a profit before. But these two put together, two American companies have produced profits of $75 billion. And compared to that, what the African continent, for instance, which requires vaccines, only 10% of Africa has been vaccinated, that the huge amount of money they're sitting on, of course, doesn't go to help with vaccination of the rest of the world. It's really profit for certain companies. This is where China, and if India had been able to supply vaccines, would have stepped in. But unfortunately, apart from China, there is really no other country which has been able to fill that gap, because European Union production, apart from the AstraZeneca one, is also expensive. BioNTech, Pfizer vaccine, that's also costly. And for a lot of the countries, it's beyond their ability to use such vaccines, apart from the fact that you need a cold chain to do it. Unlike, for instance, the AstraZeneca vaccine or the Covaxin, or the vaccines that, for instance, the Sinovac are making. So this is where it is that, yes, there is money to be made in vaccines, but only for the vaccines which the companies want to sell at a high price. And that is why also the vaccine inequality is not simply a matter of technology and distribution of the vaccine. It's also at what price countries can afford to buy the vaccines. And that picture also comes out very clearly if you see the profit that these companies are making against what the entire African continent and large parts of Latin America and Asia still require.
Thanks very much for that update, Prabir. And finally, it was the last day of action at the Africa Cup of Nations last night. Senegal are finally champions of Africa. Those were the words, in fact, that Aliou Cissé, their coach, their inspirational leader in this tournament, opened his press conference with. Before that press conference very quickly and dramatically came to an end because his players walked in, including Sadio Mane, and poured all bottles of water on his head, leading to a very angry or annoyed media manager for the CAF there. I spoke earlier to Vaibhav Raghunandan, who's been watching the tournament very closely, for all the highlights from what's been a very, very interesting tournament to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Senegal have their first ever Africa Cup of Nations title. And to be fair, like, I think this may actually well be one of the worst Africa Cup of Nations tournaments in terms of quality of football, especially considering Egypt, who have essentially just played anti-football throughout the tournament, despite the fact that they have a team with a lot of pedigree, reached the finals. And from the get-go yesterday against Senegal, as they have done throughout the tournament, they basically wanted to go to the penalties. And unfortunately for them, this time it didn't work out. Like, their goalkeeper has been stunning, and Salah has been, well, he has been as he has usually. It just almost seemed a lot like Egypt were one-man reliant, much like all these like Salah Messi comparisons, this is how it has ended up into. It has ended up into this situation where Salah is essentially the Messi from Egypt who has got no support, nothing, and is just doing it all on his own. But for his Liverpool teammate Sadio Mane, it was an outstanding redemption arc. He scored the decisive penalty that has won his country, who are quite possibly, I'm going to say, I mean, without a doubt, one of the giant killers when it comes to world football. They did this in 2002 where they beat France, and you know, it's like, it's a huge tournament for them. And Mane himself, like he missed a penalty in normal time yesterday. It was a horrible miss, and so when he went on to take the decisive penalty, you were like sort of kind of sure that it was Gabal was going to save it. But it's a huge thing for him. He's missed penalties before in this tournament. In the quarterfinals in 2017, he had missed it. He also missed against Kenya, I think, in 2019. So it's a big deal. But they will really look back on this, Senegal, and I think they'll realize that they have a team of extreme quality, and they have genuinely played some of the best football of the tournament and absolutely deserved winners. If Egypt had won it, it would have been a win for anti-football, and I think none of us want that at all. It would have been ideal if we could have seen like a great like a Cameroon versus Senegal final or something, but that was not to be. Senegalese sensation.
That's all we have on the show for today. You've been watching Daily Debrief from myself and the entire People's Dispatch team. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be back again, same time, same place tomorrow. Until then, you can get more details on all of these stories from our website, peoplesdispatch.org. And do give us a follow on all the social media platforms. We'll see you again. Stay safe. Goodbye.